Hi everyone, welcome to a small Paddock Pass podcast video show on YouTube. Neil and I are gathered together today here in Barcelona just to talk about the recent presentation of the 2025 Red Bull KTM factory racing and the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 teams. Neil, KTM have had a fantastic start to the year. They've won the Dakar again. They've also won in both categories of AMA Supercross, just 3 rounds into the season. So the Orange crew have started off flying as it would be a normal year. But then we kind of heard a little bit today for the first time about some of the way that the financial complications and the intricacies have shaped their outlook.
Obviously, they're in huge financial difficulties and are going through some restructuring to make sure that the company can survive, having to make big cuts to their racing department. But as Pitt said, they were kind of aware that things were not going well last summer, and they were able to cut the number of factory riders down. They were able to start making a bit of a streamlining course through the second half of last year. So it didn't come as a massive surprise when the news dropped in November that they were going into administration. It sounded from him that things are not necessarily all systems normal, but close to normal. He said that they have continued developing the bike. That is one thing that the riders were stressing, that Pitt was very eager to stress indeed. The race department didn't shut over the winter. There were 1 or 2 reports suggesting that they had. And they all seem pretty confident that they're going to Sepang with a bike that has continued to be developed through the winter months. Paul Espargaro, Danny Pedrosa, the test riders, were in Jerez at the start of December testing new things. And yeah, they were putting across the message anyway that things are fairly normal and they expect to be challenging towards the front of MotoGP this year.
Brad Binder remarking that he came back from having a summer off in South Africa. I went to the factory in Austria, and he said he was shocked by how much new stuff there was, how much of a workload there would be at the test in Sepang and also in Buriram. That's not the signs of a factory and a team that are just like plodding their way through another season, or perhaps desperately trying to reach the end of a contract phase.
Yeah, going through the motions basically, trying to fulfill a contract, as you say. No, it didn't seem like that at all. I guess they obviously had to put this sort of spin on it, but it did seem that from what Pitt was saying, the intention is to keep racing part of the kind of KTM identity in all aspects, in off-road, whether it's the Dakar, whether it's Supercross, MXGP, and in road racing as well. And he said, obviously, things are kind of going at a month-by-month basis at the moment. He couldn't remark on things too far into the future. But what he did say is that KTM have the intention of continuing as is currently, maybe with a couple of changes, a couple of reductions, but certainly in terms of MotoGP for many years in the future. Now, that all depends on a certain thing. As you know, end of February, there's a pretty big date coming up with regards to whether KTM get the thumbs up with their plans for going ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be February the 25th. So while we're on the way to Buriram, and sort of the Buriram International Circuit for the first Grand Prix of the year, KTM will essentially get their roadmap for the future and what that will involve. I mean, they've already slimmed down to around about 4,000 employees in Mattighofen. I think it was up near around 6,000. So there's been some real kind of streamlining going on, and actually that was the word that Pit Beirer used, Neil. But I just found also interesting, the utter conviction that he had in the fact that KTM would be racing. He justified the reason for it as well by saying, since KTM started racing in MotoGP, in that 6-year period, the turnover doubled. So the proof was in the pudding that in terms of media value and marketing, it was the right move, even though it was a costly one for what was essentially a dirt bike manufacturer. And the fact as well that they're already thinking about 2027. They say they're not building any hardware just yet, but the engineers in-house are looking towards that regulation change. But it seems to me after today that KTM seem like they're going to be there. This is not like let's just, like you say, roll out the carpet and get it over and done with.
Yeah. I guess 25th of February, that's when the administrators have to essentially give them the okay. They will have plotted out their plans for the future and how they're going to survive and how they're going to essentially exist. And that's the big date, because that's when the administrators are going to say, okay, we are confident that you can deliver with this plan.
Acosta, the fact that he believes this is KTM's all-time greatest lineup so far in MotoGP, and it's pretty hard to argue, especially with the statistics. 5 World Championships, over 70 Grand Prix wins between all 4 riders in all categories. Also, if you take the quartet, I mean, you're talking about 4 riders that finished in the top 7 of the standings last year. I mean, that has to be the strongest collective of any of the brands.
I think you're right. Yeah, over the 4 riders, definitely. As you said, I think they have the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rider from last year's championship. So that's a pretty consistent spread. And I think a lot is just going to be how quickly both Vinales and Bastianini can adapt to their new machines. And of course, KTM, when they signed both Vinales and Bastianini for Tech 3 last year, said that it's going to be for factory riders. It's not going to be the factory team and the satellite team in Tech 3. It's going to be, okay, 2 different garages, but all under the same umbrella. And whoever is performing the best will receive the new parts first. It's going to be sort of system based exactly on results and who's doing the business at the time. I think that was what managed to convince the likes of Vinales and Bastianini to go to a team like Tech 3. So that's interesting, and I guess the fact that there's barely any difference between the 2 liveries underlines exactly what's going on. Maybe in the past KTM got a little, they maybe tried to overthink the marketing side of things too much, too many brands involved. Husqvarna, Gas, MV of Augusta were going to come in as well, CF Moto. I mean, it was quite a convoluted way of doing business, and you could see the ideas behind their thinking, but it's pared back a lot more now, and it's kind of like, right, we've got 4 bikes in MotoGP, and it's every rider's getting the same support.
From talking to Acosta was very much that he's pretty energized. He doesn't cut the figure of a desperate man or someone who's slightly worried about what's ahead.
He has been in Madikoffen 2 times since the end of last year. I think one was maybe before the end of last year. He went with Albert Valera as manager, and I think they needed to be reassured in light of everything that was going on that KTM were still going to be existing, they were still going to be developing their bike, and they could go ahead looking into 2025 with confidence. A lot of occasions last year where he maybe let his inexperience show, maybe let that get the better of him, and I think a lot of what he was saying was just about being a bit calmer and kind of accepting that you don't have to try and win every weekend, and if there's not a possibility to win, don't go above and beyond to try and make that happen. So yeah, he sounded quietly confident. Acosta did sound like a slightly more mature figure than the one we saw last year.
So who's your €10 note on for finishing higher in the championship out of that 4?
I mean, is it really a question?
Of course. I think it's a bit harsh on Brad Binder just to assume that Pedro Acosta is going to wipe the floor. And the way that I know Maverick Vinales has this tendency to, paint everything amazingly beautiful in this garden full of flowers and light and gaiety, but it seems, he seems overwhelmed almost by, the package that he's found and the environment that he's found. He seems more positive than ever.
Well, okay. Well, no real change at the end there, I would say.
Come on, get rid of the cynicism.
He's been a remarkably optimistic young man in the last couple of years after his incident at Yamaha, which led to the fallout there. He's sometimes comes across as maybe a member of a cult. He's that enthusiastic and positive whenever the situation doesn't really represent as much. But yeah, he was something.
Try being indoctrinated, Neil. A bit of cheer, a bit of optimism,
yeah,
a bit of positivity.
It's rich coming from you, I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maverick could surprise us. But I mean, I think what we saw last year, Pedro Acosta, the fact that he was almost winning races by the end of the year, if he kicks on and manages to take some of the lessons from last year, I think we could be looking at not necessarily a championship challenger. I think that's a big ask with everything that's going on with KTM currently. But yeah, surely a guy that's there to win races this year.
In fact, I'm going to put my money on the fact that Binder will be the top KTM rider. Maverick will be ahead of Acosta.
I'll have some of what you're smoking, mate, if that's all right.
You can have my money if you want, but I'm prepared to put it on the table. I think, just going on the pre-season hype, which is very foolish, I know, but that's the kind of vibe I was picking up.
Well, that's a very interesting vibe indeed.
Okay, guys, we hope you like this quick roundup of the official 2025 KTM, Red Bull KTM launch. A reminder that we're backed by Renthal Street, so go to renthal.com if you need an accessory for your street bike or road bike. There's tons on there to choose from. We've also got a partnership with Pole Position Travel this year. In fact, if you go to the Pole Position website and you enter the discount code that we have, which is, let me consult my notes, find it again, PPOD25X, then you'll get a 5% off discount, something at least. So have a look on the Pole Position website and use that code and you'll be able to save a little bit of money.
Exactly, 2025 is not long away, so stick around and we'll have some more content up soon.